it going, YouTube? Coming to you today with another video, and today guys, I'd like to bring to you Sky Striker. Now, I have been playing Dragon Link for a little while, but I am going back to Striker. I brought it to a tournament yesterday, and I made it all the way to the finals before I lost in Game 3 because I could not out my own Nibiru. Definitely unfortunate, but the run of the day was really good. I ended up performing really well with the deck just because like the way that the deck interacts in the format is insane. Striker is so adaptable, even when there are 8 good decks, and then in the future, in like 2 weeks, we're going to have like 12 good decks. So now more than ever, you need to play a deck that is going to be good against multiple different options, because you still have to make the same concessions where you have to say like, well, I can beat like these 5 decks with my sideboard, but I still have to account for the 2 decks that I'm just going to lose to. So I guess those are just decks I'm going to lose to, which is unfortunate. And that's kind of the mentality whenever we see like 12 good decks in the format, right? Because you can't prepare for everything, you can't side for everything. And that's why I really like Striker personally, because of the fact that you can have so many hand traps in your main deck, and a lot of your cards just generically hit a lot of different decks. So I definitely think that is the way to go for next format if you are confused on what deck you want to play, because of the fact that there are just so many new options. I know a ton of people that are like super split on if they want to play tier or Splite right now, and it's been a huge conversation. So I hope that today going over the POTE list for Striker and different tech cards you can run for it is going to be really helpful in helping you decide what deck you're going to run for next format, because even if you're unsure and you kind of have an idea what you want to play, Striker is always that good in-between deck that you can play until you figure that out. So if you haven't already checked out my sponsors over on Imperium Duelist and Dragon Shield, definitely go ahead and check them out. And without further ado, hop right on into the first tech card. So the first tech card is one that we've already seen a couple times now, Offerings to the Dunes. So this is actually really popular back when I believe Carl was in the top 64 of Charlotte, and this is going to be one of those cards that is the quick effect removal that Striker really needs. And so this is something that we've really been saying for a long time, you know, like, hey, like Striker needs something that's not just like Widow taking, because it's really awkward sometimes when you have like double Widow and you can't take the first monster because you want your second Widow to be dead. And that's why we play Droplet twos, because it makes those situations a lot less awkward. But this card is still very good. I just feel like it's going to be better against like the Splite deck next format because of the fact that they need to control it too to be able to keep summoning from the hand as well. So this card is going to be really cool against that deck. It's not going to do a whole lot though, unfortunately, against like Tier Element. But at the same time, I think that it's going to be really good against Splite. You also just have to keep in mind that not everyone's going to be playing Tier or Splite. A lot of people are still going to be playing like Sword Soul, Punk Synchro, Dragon, because those decks are still good. We haven't had a ban list yet. So I think this card is definitely going to be good. It's definitely versatile, but I don't know how great it's going to be, but it will be really good against Splite. The next one here is going to be Solemn Strike. I personally want to go first to Striker next format. I think that's going to be the best way to go about it. I think that Strike is just generically one of the best cards that we have, especially because this used to be in the builds of Striker all the time. This is such a very good card to have, especially against Splite and using this against like Gigantic. It's very good, and it's just a really easy way for you to get spot removal. And then also if you have problematic cards that are going to hit the board like Punisher, you can always like strike to summon a Punisher, which is really impactful and something that you just want to get out of the way, right? Because otherwise it's just really hard to deal with. And then this is just one of those cards where it's kind of like Gamma in a sense in my mind, because it doesn't just negate, it destroys. And that's my favorite thing about Solemn Strike. And it's just like spot removal is so impactful, especially in this format where you just want to get like a 2 off the board, or you want to make sure that you get rid of like a Link 3 or what have you. It's just such a good card to have. I really do like Solemn Strike, and I feel like going first with Solemn Strike is definitely going to be a pretty solid option for next format. The next one I have for you is going to be Regeki. Striker already has a really good way to deal with boards, so I am signing Dark Ruler, I'm not signing Regeki. But if you're playing like another control deck like Fluanaries or what have you, this is still a very good option for you, especially if you already have the Dark Ruler on your side or your main, because of the fact that it just is a really easy way to just go ahead and board clear. Especially like decks like Sword Soul are still going to be around, and this is something that is still a very good option for that, being able to get rid of the entire Fluanaries board, getting rid of like a single negate, or like playing through 2 negates, being able to use this for one of them. It's just a generically very good card, and I like it a lot, and it's just something that a lot of people don't expect anymore. So I think even moving into a format where we don't exactly know what deck we're going to be playing against, because there's like 12, I think that this is just a card that just hits most of them generically, and it's something that is definitely a good consider for running in your side. The last one here is going to be Soul Drain. Soul Drain already got bought out. It's already like $30 for the Lost Art, but it's like $5 a piece for the other ones. I highly recommend having these because this card is very, very good against Heralment. It's one of those decks that just really cannot play without their graveyard, and this card makes sure that they don't have a graveyard. Even in Striker, you're not really worried about it because like the only thing you really lose is like Ray, but like it's not really that big of a deal, especially if you already have advantage and you already like added Engage off of Shizuku. This card is just so broken, and it's just one of those things that really just denies denies your opponent the ability to play because they cannot use their graveyard at all. That's all tier elements really want to do, right? Is they just want to use their grave. So definitely a good option. But talking about my list for POTE, this is very similar to the one that I ran yesterday too. Obviously, there's a couple cards that got changed out, especially like Mischief of the Gnome being in my sideboard. Mischief of the Gnome is really good because it's chainable, and then you can also use it again on the following turn. It's just very good, and the fact that it just hits everything in the hand permanently, even if they hit the board, is really insane. It's just a card that's just going to be a really quick GG against Splite. Yes, if they have starter, that's cool, like they're going to have a card for it, but like they still can't like summon twos from their hand for it, so it's still fine. I'm not really worried about them opening like starter if I have Mischief, because at that point it sounds like I already went first, right? And then like you still have the ability to go ahead and like put up negation as well, or hand traps. And then even if you're playing like tier element, you can also play Mischief because you're already milling so much that if you mill Mischief on your opponent's turn, you can just go, all right, cool, Mischief, and then go ahead and knock every level down to 1 in your opponent's hand, which is pretty cool. I'm also main decking the Metaverse. This is another thing that Carl made popular, and I think that this card is very good because it's one of those things where it's like if you already break the board down a little bit and then you're able to set up yourself and set up the Metaverse, if your opponent has enough cards to like combo back into you, you still have Metaverse to go ahead and just like deny your opponent the ability to combo, right? And so that's something where I really do like the ability to have that failsafe where if you set up like an Anchor or Shizuku with a hand trap and it wasn't enough, then you can go ahead and just flip Metaverse and then you're like not just dead. So I like that a lot. I think the card's really smart to play. Again, especially if you can just like break the board a little bit and be able to play and be able to activate like a Metaverse, you're pretty much just going to win that game in my opinion. But it's just one of those things where a lot of people still don't expect it, especially game 1. Very strong card. The next thing too is talking about cards like Crow. Crow is very good against the Ronin Totem if you're playing against Splite, so that you just get rid of that option completely because a lot of their extra deck really relies on them something like IP to make a board at that point if they can't make Toad. So the end board just becomes a lot weaker. Also, Nibiru in the main deck, a lot of people are probably like, why are you playing that? Because of Gigantic. And then, in my opinion, I think that Gigantic being only one card in one deck, I don't think that it's worth not running Rock because there's like 12 good decks. So at that point, you want to have Rock to be able to hit everything else. And then if you do end up playing against Splite, you can just go ahead and sideboard game 2 and 3 into like Ghost Ogre. I don't really think it's that big of a deal to like main deck Rock because of the fact that so many different decks out there that are just going to outright lose to Rock. And I think that's really important to note here because I feel like a lot of people still have the mentality where, oh, no one's going to be playing Nibiru. And I'm like, well, when you get hit by it, you know, like it's going to suck. So definitely make sure that you realize that this card is still going to be in the format. It's still going to be in a lot of people's decks and it's going to be relevant. Even though there's the one card in the one deck that says no, it's still going to be very relevant. The other card too in the sideboard being D-Barrier, a lot of people were like, hey, you know, is D-Barrier still going to be good in this format? I think it will be because Tier Element still has the ability to make Baguska, but like if you're playing Striker, you don't really care about Baguska, and just make sure that you are with some kind of out for a Baguska if you do have D-Barrier, because that's usually like the option that people will go for if they feel like D-Barrier is coming, or if you hit them with D-Barrier, and we all know that Baguska can be pretty insane. So you want to make sure that you have some kind of out for it to make sure that you're not just going to lose to it. It's not like lose a turn where it affects like the link monsters either, so if you're playing like a really combo centric deck, then you should just be fine, but just something else to think about it as well. I think that it's really nice though if you're playing like the Splite deck where you can do like the Dark Beckoning package, then you can go into like the Codebreaker. You can also go into Sky Cavalry, but I like Codebreaker a lot because it swings over Baguska, and then you can also use it for like deck Devi. There's a lot of reasons why you want to use Codebreaker in your deck. Because it also swings over a window too. And so there's quite a few things that you're allowed to do with Splite that I think is really cool. And a lot of people aren't really using the Dark Beckoning package, but I think it's really good. But beside the point, I think D-Barrier is still really good. Using it against Tier Element, Call Fusion. Again, in this deck, you're not really worried about like Baguska. And the Splite deck, just call XCs. Usually that's just enough because they usually rely really heavily on XCs. Again, the only thing they're really gonna be able to end on is maybe like Carrot, and then they'll have like well, Carrot or Red, and then they'll have like IP. So they'll have like a little bit of a board still, but I think that it's still worth it to go ahead and shut down like Toad play. And the next thing too is I'm main decking the copies of Mystic Mine, obviously with like the Metaverse. I think that it's really important to note too that I used to have a philosophy where I said like, you know, after game 1 and game 2 and 3 that you shout out Mystic Mine because like they have outs for it. But I do think that Mystic Mine turns into one of those cards that you just sit on for like 2 turns before you start going for game, because it's just for tempo. You got to be really cautious with the fact that there are going to be a lot of outs in game 2 and 3. so you can't sit on it for too long, but you want to make sure that you're on it for like maybe 2 or 3 turns just to sculpt your hand a little bit. If you can get some discards going so you can get spell count up, that's really solid too. There's a play I did at the tournament yesterday where I had Mystic Mine on the board, my opponent had 4 monsters, and then I really had to decide how I want to go about like breaking this board, right? So I used Widow Anchor, I like stole a monster, I made Zeke, and then Zeked away another monster, and then I had used Zeke's effect to clear my own Mystic Mine, made Unicorn, spun another monster, normal summoned Ash Blossom, made access code, popped another monster, and then swung for game. So it's definitely cool whenever you can use Mystic Mine as just like a tempo card, just to basically, again, to sculpt your hand a little bit and then make sure that you can actually go for game. So I think that's really important. As far as like the other hand traps that I'm running though, like Ash, Valor, Imperm, they're still going to be very generically good next format 100% of the time. The one burner, the one Shark Cannon turning into the extra copies are now chalices. I think that's been a lot nicer too, because I've really wanted a lot of effect negation. So only having like the one burner, the one Shark Cannon, they've usually just been fine. I don't really miss the second Shark Cannon, honestly. It's one of those cards that I never really want to see in my opening hand anyway. And it's something where like I only use it really when I'm going for game or whenever I just directly want to lock someone out of their graveyard. So I just like use it, reset it with multi-roll, and then use it immediately. So I've never really missed it at all. As far as like the rest of the deck goes, having the 2 Charmers is definitely important. I would always recommend to play as many Charmers as you can. But the deck itself has been working out really nice, especially against the post-POTE format. I feel like the list has been running really solid in testing, and it's something that I do plan on playing moving forward. I probably am going to end up picking up like Tier Element, but we'll have to see. I think that deck's going to be better than Spite, to be honest, in the long run. It's definitely important to note that the deck isn't going to be as strong over here as it was in the OCG, but I'm definitely interested to see how it performs. If you haven't already checked out my Discord, Twitch, or Twitter, definitely go down the links in the description below. Also, my new Instagram's down there as well. If you want a coaching session over at Metafy, definitely go over there and check it out, and I appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that all of you have a wonderful night, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.